Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Daily Briefing. I'm Tony Haggerty. I'm joined by Alison McConnell and Sean Martin today. The three amigos are reassembled. Avengers Assemble, whatever you want to call us, or Audit, and whatever. Right. Alison, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Tony. Yourself?
I'm good. We'll come to you because you haven't spoken about the Hearts game, but it's what we said. They got the result in the end, a bit fraught, but some good things and some bad things.
Yeah, I think you saw quite a similar pattern that you've seen from Celtic at times this season. Starting the game very well, dominating, having a lot of the ball, really putting Hearts under the cosh, but not quite killing the game off. And then they fade a little bit as the game goes on and Hearts come back into it. But I don't think you can underestimate the magnitude of that win. I think it was huge. I think they needed the 3 points, and I think come the end of the season, that could be a very pivotal victory when you assess where the campaign might have been won and lost. And I'm saying that now, assuming that Celtic are still fancying themselves to go and catch Rangers and pull the title back. But I think if they are to do that and they're successful in that ambition, then I think Wednesday night's game would be fairly monumental. I just don't think they could have afforded to slip at all.
Now, Sean, we move on to Dundee United.
Yep.
We've all done our respective lineups. This is where the boxing starts. This is where we all come in. Now, you and Alison have both opted for the same team that played the other night, and I've opted for the same team, but the only change that I've made to my team was that Abada starts instead of Forrest. You guys got it right the other night, 11 out of 11. I get 10 out of 11. So here starteth the debate. Alison's going to referee here. Forrest or Abada to start. I've said Abada. You guys have said Forrest. What do you think, Sean?
Nah, well, to be honest, I've said in my kind of justification for it that obviously me picking the same lineup means that Forrest retains his starting spot. I can absolutely understand why there's calls for Liel Abada to return to the fold, and I think both his underlying numbers and his actual numbers are probably worthy of it. But my argument that I made to you yesterday, and therefore I felt I had to make it in the predicted lineup as well, was the only way that Forrest is going to be able to get to his kind of level of performance back and do that is by continuing to play. And I think he's not going to get in over Jota, so it is only going to be between him and Abada for the right winger spot. And to put it kind of bluntly, I'd much rather that Ange Postecoglou had to choose between Abada and Forrest for who partners Jota on the wings rather than be forced into either one or the other.
Alison, do you feel the same way? Do you think James Forrest did enough the other night at Tynecastle?
I would agree with Sean. I think he's been out for a long time. He's had a very disrupted year, possibly even longer than that, a year to 18 months. I think he will need a successive run of games. I think he does need exposure to matches in order to get up to that level of sharpness and that level of fitness. And I do think we've spoken about it on here many times, but I think he is a very unappreciated player at times. I think he offers a creative outlet. You look at his assists, you look at his goal records, and they're second to none over the course of the last decade. And I think he really came to the fore in recent seasons. I think from the arrival of Brendan Rodgers, he kicked on another level, a bit like Callum McGregor. And I think if you can get him fit enough where he's at that level of sharpness, I think he's a real potent weapon to have in your side. And I too appreciate, I don't think Liel Abada's done anything wrong. He's a young player. I think he's still only 20. You couldn't criticise what he's contributed in the opening course of the campaign, the opening few months. But I just think it's a nice headache to have from a manager's point of view. But I do think James Forrest needs games just to get up to that level of speed.
I agree with you in terms of your thoughts about Forrest. I just think Liel Abada can consider himself really unlucky, because when he had that great start, everybody was kind of raving about him, and then he had a dip, didn't he? And everybody wanted Forrest in, saying he would help Abada. So I think Abada kind of rediscovered some for him. Scored a cracking goal against Alloa, and I felt he would have felt that it was kind of unjustly axed from the side the other night. But you always trust the manager, so I think we know that that's the toss-up for the manager, isn't it? It's Abada or Forrest for tomorrow to see who starts. And
He did take a knock as well. Remember, he took a bad knock against Dallas. So whether that played into his thinking or not, I don't know. But just based on Hearts at Tynecastle, which we would argue is in top 3 of the kind of, that's when you want your best players on your starting 11, and he chose Forrest. I would suggest he probably is willing to give Forrest the run in the team that I think he needs to get back up to speed. But again, I agree. I can see the logic. I can see why people are calling for Abada, and I like him too. I think he's done well. So more to the point for me is that he's got the choice between the two of them rather than having to play one of them and having to play them twice a week, 3 times a week, like he did have to do with Abada at the start of the season.
Yes, indeed. Now, another one that we've touched upon and we think might make his return, Alison, is Christopher Jullien. Would this be a game to maybe give him 15, 20 minutes, something like that, if Celtic are in a position to do that?
Definitely. I think if there's scope to do so, I think people would be quite excited to see him coming back in, given the length of time he's been out. That's 13, almost 14 months that he's been out of action for. So I think it will be a gentle reintroduction to the first team and coming back in. But I think if Celtic were in a fairly strong and commanding position in the weekend's game, then it might be an opportunity to give him some time and just start his next step of the rehabilitation, which is obviously coming back into the first team.
Sean, you agree with that?
I'm not against that kind of method. I think he does need to get on the pitch at some point. I would think, looking at the fixtures, it's maybe Raith Rovers would be the kind of first starting, maybe the first time for him to start. But that's not to say he can't. Like, if Celtic have actually killed a team off, like Alison was saying, if Celtic have killed the game off and there's 20 minutes left, why not give him the kind of run out? I wouldn't start him. I've seen a few people calling for him to start. I think it's 1 too soon. And 2 would disrupt Carl Starfelt as well, because I think we're all well presumed it would be Starfelt who would come in for, not Carter Vickers. I don't see the need to disrupt that partnership just before a Glasgow derby, where it's unlikely Jullien would start anyway. So, no, I think if he is going to get any game time tomorrow, it would be under the circumstances of Celtic being quite comfortable and there being about 15 minutes left or so.
Mindful of the fact, Sean, that Dundee United came to Celtic Park back in September and drew 1-1. Tam Coates set up his side really well. I think Jota was on a one-man mission to find the woodwork every time he got the ball towards the goal and succeeded. Crossbar challenge, post challenge, Jota was your man. So they are mindful that Dundee United, if they come out and play, can hurt Celtic. I
think they should be, but Postecoglou mentioned about the kind of the opening night at Tynecastle and stuff, like what's the statute of limitations on it, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously tongue in cheek with it, but I do get his point that they'd already played Hearts again another 2 times since then, beat them. They've already played Dundee United against and sent and beat them as well. We're arguably one of their best performances of the season. So I don't think it will be a cautionary tale, but I don't think it will play on their minds in any kind of pivotal way.
Alison, Celtic were impressive that day at Tannadice when a lot of people thought that'd be a tricky fixture and they made light work of it. Do you see them doing the same tomorrow, making light work of Dundee United, or again do you just have to respect every opponent and see what happens?
I think so much in terms of how Celtic play sometimes comes down to how they start. I think sometimes a 15-20 minute period that opens a game can be fairly crucial just in setting a tone. I think sometimes you've seen Celtic, and I'm thinking of that game at Easter Road, maybe in October, they start like a steam train and before you know it, they've got a very firm foothold in the game. I think the flip side of that is I think that if it can be quite a stodgy game, sometimes they toil to break teams down. So I think how they approach it and how they begin is fairly crucial to just how it plays out. But I was actually at Tannadice on Wednesday night for working a sod in Dundee United. They'll be buoyed as well. They've obviously been on a desperate run. I think it's 6 games they've gone without a win, and then of course got 6 consecutive defeats in the league, and then got that 91st minute win. Nicky Clark came off the bench, scored a penalty and scored a header. So I think they'll have a bit of a spring in their step. They've had the cup win and then the league win, and of course, as we've referenced before, in situations like this, no one expects Dundee United to do anything. The expectation and the pressure is on Celtic to come and impose themselves on the game. If you're Dundee United, it almost just eases a bit of the pressure because no one's anticipating anything. And I'm sure from their point of view, they'll be heartened by the fact that they took a point earlier in the season, and I think if you go back and analyse that game on another day, Celtic might have won it, should have won it comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you do need to be taking chances. I think it's been a pattern. I think so more than once this season where you've seen Celtic dominate games, but not really go for the kill and just make sure it's the points are secured. I think 2-0 can always be a bit fraught. As soon as someone gets a goal back, it can lend a jittery and a nervousness to the performance. I think it's crucial if they find themselves on top of the game that they find a way to take their chances and kill the game off.
Sean, they're saving it all to click for the Glasgow derby, aren't they? We've seen that all along, that it's all going to click, and
You're saying these other teams are just training sessions, Tony? Is that what you're saying?
Take all those chances. No, I'm not saying they're training at all. I'm just saying if they're going to pick a game for it all to click and fall into place, then the Glasgow derby is the one that they want it to happen. But they are playing United tomorrow, and we'll just get Frank's doom and gloom one out the road, Sean, shall we? I mean, as ever, not too much to preview in the sense of yet another only must-win game against Dundee United, and they need for Celtic to get that early goal that Ange Ball requires and demands, and then move on. Morning, Frank. How you doing? And he wouldn't start with Jullien because he's been out for so long, 15 months, hasn't changed. Ideally, come on for the last 25 minutes if it's 2-0 or 3-0. That's exactly what we're thinking, Frank, as well. David Braddock is in. Morning, David, regular contributor. Would like to see Jullien get 45 minutes under his belt. So there's a bit of opinion out there. Frankly, I know if it's true enough. So I think it would be good to just get Jullien some minutes, as you say, Sean, and possibly start him against Wraith Rovers. That would be my thinking. Alison said that as well. But you can't underestimate Dundee United. But again, every game now just falls into the must-win category. How you go about your business is anybody's guess. But, there are periods, especially in the first half, Sean, and Celtic are really rampant and they're dominant. And they maybe have only one goal or 2 goal lead, as Alison says, and that's precarious. You saw that the other night when Hearts got a goal back and Celtic tired as well. We touched upon that yesterday about the kind of they're going hell for leather for 65, 70 minutes, and then there's a kind of tapering off. Is that a worry for you? Or?
Only in the sense that right now the squad's stretched again because of the people that are unavailable, because I do think that it makes a difference, especially with the 5 subs rule just now, where Ange Postecoglou could potentially have 5 people that could come on and reinvigorate that. So half your outfielders could be replaced to keep that intensity up. Just now, you saw with the subs the other day, it's not the ideal scenario. It's not the ideal replacements. And I think that plays into it as well. When he's got at least near a full squad available, I think you will see that intensity stick for most of the game. But your first point there, that they've been underperforming in front of goal. There's no getting away from that. They do create a fair amount most games, and they don't score enough most games, but they've scored enough to be on this unbeaten run with all sorts of victories in between. And Leverkusen away, the only real blip since the start of October. So it's going right. It is on the up. It's just that Ange Postecoglou feels, and is right to feel, that they should still be doing better in front of goal.
You said that, Alison. You've written a column about you're admiring Celtic's resilience, but you have to be clinical. Got that kind of killer touch in front of goal and put games to bed when they're in that period of ascendancy and dominance. I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, I think it is, and I do think they don't look as fragile a team as they did 6 months ago, even 4 months ago. I do think there's a level of belief and assurance it wasn't always there, and I think that was reflected in going to Tynecastle and getting the win. However, I do think that it is a problem when, and I take Sean's point, I think when there's an opportunity to bring in reinforcements, you can sustain the same levels and the same energy. And I have a huge amount of sympathy because there hasn't been a point this season where that has really been an option. I think the squad has been, it's a really odd dichotomy, really, because the squad on one hand looks quite bloated and heavy, and then on other hand, when you analyse it, it actually still looks quite thin. Given the injury problems and personnel away, but I think it will improve when there's a full quota of players there. But I do think up until then, I think it is important if you're creating chances that you try and take them.
Sean, here's a question for you. When will Ange ever have that full quota to pick from? When do you think he'll turn up?
It's a myth.
Oh man, I've got 18 players here and I need to pick 11 strongest ones. Do you think he's praying for that day? Because when you get the guys that are away in international duty, ones that are in your back, you all have a real selection dilemma. But Celtic have never had that at any point this season, have they?
That would be his utopia, wouldn't it? But no, I don't.
Yeah.
I think just because of the kind of character he is, he won't make that excuse. I don't think you'll ever hear him make that excuse. He'll point it out, but he'll never use it as a reason that they've lost a game, that kind of thing. I mean, we all want to see it just to see the 90-minute intensity, the 90-minute performance. I'd love to see it while there's still 5 subs available, because I really do think that could make a massive difference for Celtic more than most teams. As I say, half your outfielders, you can reinvigorate half of the outfield starting 11 to keep that intensity up. And if it's a full squad to choose from, then the possibilities are great. So it might not see it, it very well might not see it. It's just part and parcel of professional football, but it would be nice. It would be nice just for him to even have that benefit for one game.
And there's also the caveat tomorrow, Alison, that Rangers playing the early kick-off. So there could be a wee bit of added pressure ramped on Celtic by Rangers going 7 points ahead for a few hours at least anyway, so Celtic might have to deal with that.
I think that's definitely a factor. I think for either team in the situation where they're playing catch up, whether that's a later Saturday kickoff or a Sunday kickoff, I do think it is an element. I think the pressure is there regardless, because you can't really afford to slip, but I do think it adds another layer to it, just knowing that points in the bag and points on the board is one thing, and then the potential to go out and do it is quite another. So, but I would definitely take that point. And I think part of it, of course, is that you still have to go and win your own games, and you have to do it regardless, but you do need to cope with that element of it. Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Sean, that regardless of what happens tomorrow, you have to concentrate on your own job, but it's in there in the background, isn't it? You can't ignore it.
I think the key is to use it, innit? It's to use that kind of pressure rather than let it spoil your day, let it spoil your mindset, that kind of thing. I don't think, like Ange Postecoglou's mentioned a few times, you're on your own race, all that kind of thing, and that is all true. It's very true, especially when you're the ones doing the chasing. But I do think that you also need to be aware of the situation round about you, and that's where it becomes embracing the pressure rather than either running from it or letting it kind of get into your head. So,
but I mean, Celtic will walk onto that park tomorrow not knowing the Rangers result, will they? The players.
I think they'll figure it out at some stage.
I know managers players say, we avoided that, we didn't look at that. I don't buy that. When managers say, I don't read papers, I don't listen to things, fine well that somebody's shoving the paper in front of them or giving them clips of listening to this. They use it as motivation tactics.
Listening to the old tranny in the stands and shouting it, and it spreads along the crowd.
Yeah. Do you believe that, Alison, that they are blissfully aware of what's going on?
Oh, of course. And I think in the current climate now, it's almost impossible.
That's unavoidable, isn't
it? No, I don't think there's any question that they'll know. And I think, to be honest, if you're doing your job properly, I think you want to know. I think, I know you don't want to be distracted and it shouldn't really alter your focus. But at the same time, it has an effect on your position and your situation. So I think, I don't think there's any doubt that
So will we be having a private group chat tomorrow for the bragging rights once Abada starts over Forest, or Forest starts over Abada, and you send me all the kind of we were right.
It depends. I mean, it's 1-0 to us already, isn't it? So.
It's 1-0 to you guys. Tony's going in search of an equaliser. I'm playing the big Giakoumakis role tomorrow. I'm getting in when it hurts and see if I can get the old.
See, to be honest, I'm more chuffed with my 8 out of 11 for that Alloa game than I am with the 11 out of 11 the other day. So.
I think stops clocks till the right time. Basically, I think that's the only conclusion we can draw on this matter.
But just touching on Giakoumakis before we go. I was really impressed with that finish the other night, Alison. Top draw ball into the box, and I asked Ange a question about being really chuffed at that, and he said, that's why he was brought to the club for that. That's 2 goals in 2 games, a slow confidence builder for him, but he did well the other night, I have to say.
Yep, I thought he did play well. I think going back to what Sean was talking about at the start of the week when he was looking back at the kind of goals he'd scored.
Yeah.
And I thought that actually came to mind when I saw the highlights and I saw the goal. I thought it referenced what you were talking about, and an actual fact that it's one of his strengths is getting in front. But I thought he took it well. I thought he took the goal at Alloa well. I think what you will say is it would do his confidence no harm at all. 2 goals in 2 games, a wee bit of a run in the side, and I think if you're in the team and you're scoring goals, you always feel as though it's a real cloak of protection. I think you'll maybe feel as though it inoculates you to any kind of criticism when you can point to stats like that. So I think it'll encourage him. I think there's a reliance on him at the minute. I don't think there's any doubt about that, given the fact that obviously Maeda is away and Kyogo's still injured. So I think that there is an onus on him to come up with goals, and I think he'll feel probably quite quietly satisfied with his return over the last couple of games.
Likes a one-touch finish, as you said, Sean.
Yep.
Doesn't he?
He does, as I say, that is the vast majority, overwhelming majority of his goals are that kind of, not necessarily the stylish kind of finish, but just in general, that kind of finish, one touch, middle of the box, ball in, whether it's high or low. Because as I said to you the other day, if Ange has previous for being able to play to a striker's strengths, if it's not the strengths of another striker that he has at his disposal. So it's obvious that he's not going to bring what Kyogo brings in terms of the pressing and running in behind, that kind of thing. But he is good in and around the box. And he did, to be fair to him, he did try he gave the pressing aspect, the off the ball aspect a good go, which is all you can really ask. I don't think anybody's really up to replicating what Kyogo does day in, day out, that kind of thing. But no, that is the way that you can get the best out of Giakoumakis, and I don't think it necessitates a sacrifice in principles from Ange, just a slight adaptation in where you're putting the cross, that kind of thing.
Excellent. We move on to Dundee United. Must win. They're all must win games before the big one on Wednesday, and we'll wrap that up long before then. Alison, thanks for your valid contribution. Always enjoy it. Sean, you're a star as well. And cheers. Everybody have a good Friday and enjoy your weekend. And we shall see you on Monday.
Cheers, Tony. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.